Hi, welcome back. This is an original Tales First story about family and fairness and the moment the tables turn. Let's begin.
My parents told everyone in town that my 12-year-old is a thief. She lost all her friends and got kicked off her school teams. She should learn respect, my mom said. So I made one call to my grandpa's former lawyer, and their lives started to unravel. I was only gone for a week. How bad could it be? That's what I told myself as I pulled into my parents' driveway that evening. A week, 7 days, one suitcase, one work trip, one set of grandparents who'd been begging to have some special bonding time. I should have known that when my mother says bonding, she means training. Like my daughter is a puppy that needs to stop peeing on the rug. The porch light was on, the curtains were drawn. Everything looked normal in the way a house looks normal right before you walk into a room and realize you're the only person who didn't get the memo. My mom opened the door with that bright smile she saves for company. The one that says, "See? Everything is perfect. Nothing is wrong. And if something is wrong, it's definitely not my fault." "Sarah," she sang, like we were in a commercial for Family Values. My dad appeared behind her, wearing his usual expression, neutral, patient, slightly bored. The expression of a man who hasn't had an original thought since the late 90s and is proud of it. And then my daughter stepped into view. She didn't run to me. She didn't bounce. She didn't launch into the 100-mile-an-hour report she usually gives me after being away from me for longer than a grocery store checkout line. She just stood there. Quiet, eyes down, holding her dance bag like it was the only thing keeping her from floating away. My stomach tightened. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, forcing my voice to stay light. "I missed you." She hugged me back, but it was stiff, like she was hugging a relative at a funeral. My mom patted my arm. "She's just tired. Big week." I looked at my daughter's face. Her eyes were dull in a way that didn't match tired. Her mouth had that tight line kids get when they're trying very hard not to cry, not to talk, not to do anything that might crack the dam. "Thanks for watching her," I said automatically, because I was raised in a family where you say thank you before you know what you're thanking them for. "Oh, of course," my mom said. "Family takes care of family." Then she smiled wider, like she'd just said something inspirational. My dad nodded once. "Drive safe." And that was it. No details, no updates, no, "Hey, just so you know, something happened." Just the fake smile, the neutral nod, and my daughter standing there like she'd aged 5 years in 7 days. I told myself to wait until we were in the car. We got in. I started the engine. The interior light clicked off. The world narrowed down to dashboard glow and the quiet hum of the road. My daughter stared out the window. I took a breath. "So, how was it? How are you doing?" "Fine," she said. The word came out flat. "Practiced." "Not fine." I tried again, casually, like you do when you don't want to scare something fragile. "Did you sleep okay?" "Yeah." "Did you have fun with Grandma and Grandpa?" "Yeah." 3 yeahs. Like she was answering a survey she didn't agree to. I swallowed. "How's dance going? You have a performance in a few days, right?" She didn't respond right away. I glanced at her. Her hands were clenched around the strap of her bag. Then she said quietly, "I'm not on the team anymore." I felt like someone had hit the brakes inside my chest. "What do you mean you're not on the team anymore?" "They kicked me out." The words were so matter-of-fact, like she was telling me the weather. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Why would they kick you out?" She didn't answer. "Sweetheart," I said, gentler now, because something was breaking in me. "Why?" Silence. The road stretched ahead of us, ordinary and calm, like it had no idea what was happening inside my car. I tried again. Talk to me, okay? You can tell me. She swallowed, still staring out the window. I don't want to talk about it. That sentence landed heavier than they kicked me out. Because my daughter talks about everything. She talks about the weird sound the fridge makes. She talks about a teacher's earrings. She talks about the way a kid in math class breathes too loud. When she says she doesn't want to talk, it means she's holding something that hurts too much to touch. We drove in silence for a while, and in that silence, my brain did what it always does when it's terrified. It tried to fix things with normalcy. Like if I could find the right familiar thread, I could pull her back to herself. So I said, lightly, like I wasn't internally screaming, "Do you already have a present for Sophie for her birthday on Saturday?" My daughter's jaw tightened. "I'm not going," she said. I blinked. "What do you mean you're not going? You've been talking about Sophie's birthday for weeks." "I'm not invited." The words were small. The meaning was enormous. I felt my pulse in my throat. "Why aren't you invited?" She didn't answer. She stared at the window, the streetlights passing like slow, blinking eyes. I kept my voice calm because that's what you do when your child is in free fall. You don't scream. You become the ground. But inside my head, I was panicking. Who is this kid? Where is my kid? What happened in a week? We got home. I made dinner because mothers are ridiculous creatures who will saute vegetables while their entire world is collapsing. My daughter sat at the table. She ate a few bites like she was doing it out of obligation to gravity. No talking, no complaining, no asking for dessert. After a few minutes, I set my fork down and said, "Okay, what happened?" She stared at her plate. Her shoulders rose and fell once, like she was trying to keep everything locked inside. Then her face crumpled. Tears came fast, the way they do when a kid has been holding them back for too long. "Grandma said I was stealing," she choked out. My skin went cold. "What?" She wiped her face with the back of her hand, furious at herself for crying. "She told people I'm a thief." My mind tried to reject the sentence, like it was a foreign language. "Why would Grandma say that?" My daughter sucked in a shaky breath. "Because of Brielle." Of course. Brielle. My sister Vanessa's daughter. The family's crowned princess. My daughter kept talking now, like once the dam broke, the water had to go somewhere. "Brielle couldn't find her shoes," she said, voice trembling. "Her dance shoes. The ones she needed. And she was supposed to go on stage and she couldn't. And she started freaking out. And then she said I took them." My daughter's hands clenched into fists on the table. "I didn't. I swear I didn't touch them. I didn't even go near her stuff." I leaned forward. Okay. And then what?" She swallowed hard. "We got home. And later, Grandma and Grandpa came into my room." I pictured it instantly. My parents standing over my child in a bedroom that wasn't hers, in a house where adults were always right and kids were always guilty by default. "They said I stole them," my daughter whispered. "They said I did it to sabotage her performance, because I wanted to outshine her." Her voice cracked on outshine. "I didn't," she said again. "I didn't do anything." My heart was pounding. "What did you say?" "I said I didn't do it. I said I didn't know where they were. I thought I was just going to be grounded." She gave a small, broken laugh that wasn't humor. "They said I was grounded. And then they went to school." My mouth went dry. "They went to your school?" She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "They told people. They told the coach. They told moms." I could barely breathe. "What did they tell them?" "That I stole Brielle's shoes," she said. "That I'm a thief." I stared at my own kitchen wall as if it might explain how my parents became people who could do this to a child. "And the shoes?" I asked, voice tight. Did they ever find them? My daughter wiped her face, shaking her head. They said they found the shoes later, back at their house, in the hallway by the front door. They even showed them to me, but I didn't see them find them. They just held them up and said that meant I must have put them there. She looked up at me, eyes wide. Mom, I never took Brielle's shoes. I never touched them. I don't know how they ended up back at the house, but it wasn't me. I believed her. I didn't have to think about it. I believed her the way you believe gravity exists. And then, she swallowed and stared at the table edge. They kicked me off the team. Her fingers worried at the seam of her sleeve, pulling and releasing the thread like she didn't know what else to do with her hands. And everyone started acting like... She searched for the word, then lowered her eyes. Like I'm not safe. A few seconds passed, then quieter. Sophie won't talk to me anymore. I stopped what I was doing without meaning to. The dish towel hung half-folded in my hands. Sophie wasn't just a name. Sophie was the birthday on Saturday. Sophie was the girl who had been in our kitchen 100 times, leaving hair ties on the counter and laughing like she belonged here. Sophie, I said. My daughter nodded once. She kept looking down. She said, if I'd do it to Brielle, I'd do it to anyone. She said it like she was repeating a line she'd been forced to memorize. No tears, just the words, placed carefully on the table between us. I set the dish towel down. Not fast, not dramatic, just flat. Okay, I said, steady. Thank you for telling me. Then I picked up my phone, and I called my parents. My mom answered on the second ring, cheerful. Hi, Sarah. I didn't bother with greetings. What did you do? There was a pause. Then my mom sighed like I was being dramatic. What are you talking about? You told people my daughter stole. My mom's voice sharpened. She stole Brielle's shoes. My hands were shaking. How do you know? She couldn't find them, my mom said, as if that was proof. And then we found them at home in the corridor. I blinked. In the corridor? Yes, my mom said. Right there. That doesn't prove anything, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Maybe Brielle left them there. Maybe she forgot them. My mom made a small scoffing noise. Brielle wouldn't do that. So you don't actually know, I said, my voice rising despite myself. You don't actually know my daughter stole anything. My dad's voice came on the line now, low and irritated. We know. No, I said. You assumed. And you destroyed her life over an assumption. My mom's tone shifted, not defensive, not guilty, righteous. Sarah, she said, like she was explaining something simple to a slow child. Even if she didn't steal, she still needs to learn respect. I went still. What did you say? She needs to learn respect, my mom said again, calm as ever. Across the table, my daughter had stopped eating. Her hands were tucked under her thighs like she didn't trust them. You called her school, I said. We told them what happened, my mom replied. They needed to know. You didn't know, I said. You assumed. My dad's voice cut in, flat. We handled it. I swallowed. Did you even ask her what happened before you started telling people? A brief pause. Then my mom said, sharper, this isn't a courtroom, Sarah. No, I said. It's her life. My mom didn't soften. Even if she didn't take them, she still needed consequences. I ended the call. The kitchen went quiet. My daughter looked up at me like she was waiting to see what kind of world this was going to be. I set the phone down and nodded once. They'd turned 1 week into a weapon, and I was done letting them use it. They didn't know it yet, but soon I would be making a call, and this call would change everything. The respect obsession didn't start with a missing pair of shoes. It didn't start with my daughter. It started with me. I didn't understand that for a long time. Or maybe I did, but I didn't want to. When you grow up in a family like mine, you learn how to make yourself small in ways you don't even notice. My sister Vanessa was always the favorite. I couldn't have told you why if you'd asked me at 8 years old. I just knew it the way you know which side of bread has the butter. There's a moment I still remember, like it stuck under my skin. We were at the dinner table. I was maybe 11. My dad asked something simple like how school was going. I answered. Not loudly, not rudely, just answered. My dad cut me off mid-sentence. Don't interrupt. I froze, confused. I had been asked a question. I was answering it. A few minutes later, Vanessa interrupted my mom to tell a story. My mom laughed. She's so confident. I remember sitting there with my hands in my lap, staring at my plate, realizing the rules changed depending on which daughter was speaking. That pattern followed us into adulthood. Vanessa got celebrated, I got managed. Vanessa got excused, I got corrected. And when I got divorced, I needed help. Not because I wanted to cling to family, but because life is expensive and childcare is real, and sometimes you're just trying to survive without collapsing on the kitchen floor. My parents offered support. They offered it loudly, publicly, like they were saints. And because I wanted my daughter to have family, I accepted. Then my daughter grew older, and the pattern shifted to the grandchildren. Vanessa's daughter, Brielle, became the new center of gravity. You could feel it in the way my mother's voice softened when she said her name, in the way my dad showed up early for Brielle's events and late for mine. And you could see it in the way my parents reacted the first time my daughter outshined Brielle. It happened at dance studio results day. It was school run. The girls were lined up. The coach read out placements. My daughter got a better spot than Brielle. Not because anyone handed it to her, because she earned it, because she worked, because she practiced until her legs shook. I expected, for a brief naive moment, that my parents might be proud. Instead, my mom leaned close and whispered, "Don't rub it in. Brielle is sensitive." Vanessa nodded like that was completely reasonable. Just tell her to be humble. Nobody told Brielle to be gracious. Only my daughter to shrink. And then there was my grandfather, my mom's dad, the only adult in my family who made me feel like we were allowed to exist as ourselves. When my daughter practiced in the living room, he'd sit and watch the whole routine like it mattered. He'd ask her questions about what she was learning. He'd praise effort, not attention. He treated her like a person. He died 3 years ago, when my daughter was 9. After the funeral, I asked my parents if I needed to sign anything. My mom waved her hand like paperwork was an annoying mosquito. "No, we're handling it. Don't worry about paperwork." My dad added, "It's taken care of." And because I was grieving and exhausted and trained not to challenge them, I accepted it. I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know that when my parents say handled, it means controlled. I didn't know that the week I left my daughter in their care would be the week they decided to teach her respect. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed listening to my daughter's breathing down the hall, thinking about how quickly a child's world can be destroyed by adults with nice smiles and community connections. The next morning, I did what mothers do when panic turns into purpose. I moved. I called the coach. I called the school. I called Sophie's mom. Each call felt like hitting a wall covered in polite words. "Oh, we're so sorry. We understand you're upset. We have to consider the safety of other children. Your parents seemed very sure." It was amazing, actually. How very sure is apparently a substitute for proof. My daughter sat on the couch, hoodie pulled up, staring at nothing. She flinched every time my phone rang. That's when I realized explaining it calmly wasn't going to fix this. I needed someone who spoke authority, someone official, someone who didn't care how charming my mom could be in public. So I called my grandpa's former lawyer. When he was alive, he used to praise her, said she could fix any problem, so I made an appointment. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a calm voice. The kind of calm that doesn't come from peace. It comes from experience. I brought my daughter with me, not to traumatize her with legal talk, to show her that she is not powerless and that people can't treat her the way they did without consequences. Adults don't get to destroy her and call it discipline. My daughter sat beside me, hands folded in her lap, trying to look brave. She had that tight, careful posture kids get when they're afraid of taking up space. The lawyer listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded once. Accusing a child of theft without proof and spreading it through school channels is serious. I exhaled. So we can do something. Yes, she said. We can. We can send letters. We can demand written basis for the school decisions, including why the school dance team has kicked her out. And we can warn your parents that continued false statements have consequences. My daughter looked up at that. Consequences? The lawyer turned to me. Do your parents handle anything official for your daughter? I frowned. No. The lawyer's eyes narrowed slightly, like she'd just heard something that didn't fit. Then who is handling the trust? I blinked. What trust? She looked at me for a long moment. The trust your grandfather set up for her. My skin went cold in that specific way it gets when the world tilts. There is no trust, I said, because I truly believed that. The lawyer's expression didn't change, but something sharpened behind her eyes. I'm surprised you don't know about it. I stared at her. I don't. My parents told me everything was handled. The lawyer leaned back slightly, thinking. Your grandfather was very particular about planning. My mouth went dry. You're sure? I'm sure enough, she said, to investigate. But I want to be clear. It's possible your parents are trustees, which means we'll have to go through them to request documents and accounting. I felt something in me shift, like a door opening to a hallway I didn't know existed. The lawyer continued, practical. We'll send 2 things, a formal request for trust documents and accounting, and a letter demanding that they stop spreading claims of theft without proof. My daughter watched her with wide eyes, like she couldn't believe adults could talk to other adults this way. After the meeting, I did what I'd promised my daughter I'd do. I showed up for her. I went to the school. I sat across from people who smiled politely and tried to tell me that concerns had been raised. I kept my voice steady. You don't have proof. You can't punish a child based on gossip. I watched them flinch when I used words like attorney and liability. And when my daughter came home from one short attempt at school looking like she'd been scraped raw, I took her for ice cream. Not because ice cream fixes defamation, because sometimes you need to remind a child that there is still sweetness in the world. In the car, she said quietly, Do you think people will ever believe me? I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. They will, I said, because we're going to make them. 2 days later, my lawyer mailed the letters, and then my parents called. My mom's voice was sharp before she even said hello. This is how you treat family? You send a lawyer? I kept my voice calm because that calm is a weapon. Answer the letter. My dad came on. If you wanted documents, you could have asked. They aren't for you, my mom snapped. You didn't inherit anything. Those documents are for us. You told everyone my child was a thief, I said. You didn't give me the courtesy of a private conversation. You don't get to demand one now. My mom's tone went syrupy, the way it does when she's trying to make me feel unreasonable. We're busy. We have lives. We don't have time for your drama. My daughter is 12, I said, and my voice finally cracked. And you destroyed her life in a week. She should learn respect, my mom said, again, like it was a prayer. I swallowed. Answer my lawyer. My mom hissed. If you do this, you're not family. I paused. Then I said, quietly, you stopped being family when you decided my daughter deserved to be called a thief. I hung up, and I meant it. They didn't respond right away. Of course they didn't. People like my parents don't like paper trails. Paper trails don't care how charming you are at church. Instead, the town did what towns do. It talked, and then it posted. My daughter came into the kitchen one morning holding her phone like it was burning her hand. Her eyes were red, but her face was frozen, the way it gets right before tears. Mom, she said, voice small. Look. She handed me the phone. There was a post. Someone I vaguely recognized. Someone who had probably smiled at me in the grocery store last month. The post was long, dramatic, full of moral outrage. It was about my daughter being a thief, about me being a mother who refuses to discipline, about how I was using lawyers to threaten honest people. Comments stacked underneath like bricks. She stole, and now her mom is suing everyone. Kids like that need consequences. Sarah always spoiled her. If she stole, punish her. Imagine defending theft. She's teaching her daughter to commit crimes and play victim. My hands went cold. My daughter whispered, they think it's true. I swallowed. I know. She swiped again and showed me another screen. A group chat. Kids from school. Her name in the chat like it was a joke. Thief, liar, freak. Someone had written, don't let her near your stuff. Someone else. Her mom is crazy. She's suing. My daughter's breathing hitched. I didn't do anything, she said, like she was trying to convince the air. I know, I said. And then I did the only thing I could do in that moment. I pulled her into my arms, held her tight, and let her cry into my shirt while I stared at the phone and felt something in me harden. They were trying to break her again, this time with a crowd. My daughter didn't go to school that day, or the next. She kept saying, my life is ruined. Like 12 is old enough to feel the finality of social death, but too young to know it isn't permanent. I took screenshots. I documented every post, every comment, every call. I sent everything to the lawyer. The lawyer replied simply, we will add this. Do not respond publicly. We will proceed. A private message from Brielle popped up. Can we talk? Are you in school? My daughter stared at it like it might change if she waited long enough. Her thumb hovered over the screen without touching anything. She didn't type. She didn't even blink for a second. The typing dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Another message followed. Can we meet anyway? Alone. My daughter's shoulders lifted like she'd braced for a hit. She let out a slow breath through her nose, the kind kids do when they're trying not to cry in front of an adult. She finally looked at me, eyes glassy and flat at the same time. What do I do? She asked, barely audible. We don't do anything alone, I said. If she wants to talk, it's where I can see you. She nodded once, stiff. I called the school and told them we were coming by to pick up assignments since she'd been home. At the front office, my daughter kept her hood up and her hands hidden in her sleeves. The receptionist's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. And then Brielle appeared near the hallway like she'd been waiting for us to walk in. She saw my daughter and stopped. Her face flickered, pale, then flushed, like she couldn't decide whether to run or speak. Can we talk? Brielle asked, quiet. My daughter nodded. Brielle's eyes slid to me. Alone. You can talk where I can see you, I said. Brielle hesitated, then nodded. They walked a few steps down the hall and stopped near the glass doors, still in my line of sight, out of earshot. As they started walking, my daughter slipped her phone into her pocket. At the time, I thought it was just a nervous habit. They talked for a minute, maybe 2. Brielle kept twisting her bag strap. My daughter barely moved, like she didn't trust herself to do anything that could be misread. Then my daughter turned and walked back toward me. Her eyes were wide and glossy. Her face looked like it had lost all its color. "She confessed," she said quietly. I kept my voice even. "Confessed what?" My daughter swallowed hard. "I recorded it." "You did?" She nodded quickly. "Before I walked over, I pressed record, because nobody believes me." We went home. At the kitchen table, she set the phone down between us. Her finger trembled when she hit play. Brielle's voice came through tight and fast. She said she couldn't find her shoes. She said she panicked. She said she blamed my daughter. Then her voice dropped. "And then I found them later," Brielle said. "They were with my stuff. At home. I think I forgot." A pause. Breathing. Brielle trying not to cry. "I wanted to tell people," she said. "But Grandma told me not to." My daughter's head snapped up like her body reacted before her mind could. Brielle kept going, voice smaller now. "She said it was already done. She said it would teach you respect, and that I shouldn't tell anyone. But now everyone hates you. I don't mean for any of this." The recording ended. My daughter stared at the phone like it was proof and betrayal at the same time. She whispered, "So they knew." I reached across the table and covered her hand. Her fingers were cold. "Yes," I said. She didn't go to school the next day either. I didn't force her. I couldn't. A few days later, the lawyer called. "Sarah," she said, voice serious. "We received documents." "My parents finally responded?" "After delay," she said. "Yes." She didn't start with feelings. She started with facts. "There is a trust," she said. "Funded at about $403,000 when your grandfather died." She continued, calm and precise. "Annual distributions for education and at activities. A larger amount at 16. The remainder at 18. I swallowed. My daughter never got anything. "No," she said. "She didn't." Then, "Your parents, as trustees, took money out as advances or loans. Around $108,000 over the last few years." A beat. "None of it was repaid." "Why would they do this?" I asked, but it came out thin. On the other end, the lawyer didn't answer right away. Papers shifted. A pen tapped once, then stopped. "There's one more thing," she said. "In the trust, there's a clause." "A clause?" "A misconduct provision," she said. "A character clause." I stayed quiet. Behind me, my daughter's spoon clicked softly against her bowl, slow and absent. "It allows the trustees to withhold or reduce distributions if the beneficiary is convicted of theft or another serious offense," the lawyer said. "Or if there's a formal finding of dishonest conduct. Or if the trustees decide a distribution would be unsafe or inappropriate." The words lined up with everything my mother had said about respect, and suddenly they didn't sound like discipline. They sounded like a plan. "So they tried to brand her a thief," I said. The lawyer's voice stayed careful. "This smear campaign alone probably wouldn't trigger it. Not without something official." "But it could be the start," I said. "Yes," she replied. "A pattern. Something that makes a later accusation easier to push into an official record." I lowered myself into a chair. My daughter looked up from the table, not asking what was said, just watching my face like she could read the answer there. "If it ever did get official," I asked, "what happens to the money?" "It doesn't disappear," the lawyer said. "It follows the trust. Alternate beneficiaries." My mouth went dry. "Who?" "Potentially your parents," she said. or another named branch of the family. I turned and looked at my daughter, shoulders hunched, hands wrapped around her spoon like it was the only steady thing left. 12 years old and already learning how quickly adults can decide who you are. "Send me everything," I said into the phone. "I will," the lawyer replied. "And don't engage with them directly. Keep every message, every post, every call." I hung up and stood there for a second, phone still in my hand. My parents hadn't just punished a child. They'd been setting a trap, and they didn't know it yet, but they were the ones standing closest to it. By the time everything caught up, the story had already changed. The assistant principal didn't interrupt when I played the recording. He didn't nod. He didn't frown. He sat perfectly still, hands folded on the desk, eyes fixed somewhere just past my phone. When it ended, he didn't look at me right away. He reached for a legal pad, tore off the top sheet, and slid it into a folder without reading it. Then he said, "We'll need a copy of that." "Not can we. Not if you don't mind." That's how authority actually works. Quiet, sudden, and allergic to embarrassment. Within days, my daughter's record was corrected. Not announced. Not apologized for. Corrected. The school activities office followed suit. The coach called her back onto the team with the kind of voice people use when they're trying very hard not to admit they were wrong. Once the adults stopped treating rumor like evidence, the kids followed. The group chats went quiet. The posts stopped getting traction. A few friends reappeared, awkward but sincere. Not everyone came back, and that was fine. My daughter stopped walking like she was waiting to be shoved. Brielle switched schools before the semester ended. No explanation, no goodbye, just absence. Small towns love closure as long as it doesn't require accountability. Then came the part my parents assumed would never see daylight. The trust wasn't small. It had been funded at about $403,000 when my grandfather died. It wasn't meant to sit untouched until adulthood. It included annual distributions of $2,500 for approved activities and education, a larger amount at 16 and the remainder at 18. My daughter had received nothing. Meanwhile, my parents, trustees by title, not behavior, had been helping themselves. About $108,000, labeled as advances or loans, with no repayment plan and no disclosure. Money quietly pulled out over years, while telling everyone else to show restraint. When the accounting traced the funds, it got uglier. Some went to my parents. Some went to Vanessa and Brielle. One grandchild's future used to pad another's present. They were ordered to repay it. They didn't have the money. They asked Vanessa. Vanessa declined. So they sold the house. The same house where my mother had lectured a 12-year-old about respect. The same living room where my father had nodded along while lies hardened into facts. They moved into a rental they would have once described as temporary. The money went back into the trust. The balance was restored. The trusteeship was changed. I became the one signing off. My daughter can't touch it yet. She doesn't need to. What she needed was protection, not spending power. The social fallout was quieter than the accusations, but far more permanent. Invitations stopped. Calls went unanswered. People who had been very comfortable condemning a child became suddenly busy. I went no contact, no announcement, no final confrontation, just silence where entitlement used to live. My daughter still has days where she remembers, days where certain hallways feel longer than they should. But she knows now that the truth doesn't need volume, just proof. And the people who wanted her to learn respect taught her something instead. That accountability eventually arrives, and it never knocks politely. So tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe.